Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
There is enough for everybody. There is enough for everybody. I think this scarcity mentality, I think kind of tends to pervade things. We don't have to feel that way. We can be abundant. There is abundance. There is enough for everybody. And so we feel like if we can do those two types of things, have an incredible traveler experience and then have an incredible property manager experience, how can't we win? Like, how can't we win? And then how can't everybody win? And I know that it sounds kumbaya, but why can't that be the case in a business? Why, right? I find that if everybody is fired up about something, I think in the long term effect of it is that I don't know, it provides a lot for a lot of different people and could be a really good thing. And so that's kind of what our mentality is.
What's up, Slick Talkers? I want to do dynamic duo sponsorship placements for our partners, and the best dynamic duos I could put together for you are our first one of Hostfully and Minute. Now, you probably heard our Minute with Minute segment with Nathan Smith over at Minute. If I could say Minute 1,000 times, then I will. But basically, if you are using Hostfully's property management platform, then you can go to their integration marketplace and turn on your integration with Minute. So that way, everything is operating seamlessly in your hub to run your business without any issues and headaches. It just is so nice to have proper integration partners together. And I couldn't be more thankful for these two partnering with us on the podcast. So make sure you check out the show notes because we have special offers just for you from both companies, Hostfully and Minute, because you're a listener of the podcast and they love taking care of our listeners. So check out the links in the show notes. And of course, like always, thank you for tuning into the podcast. All right, Slick Talkers, we are back for another episode, and I'm super excited because, man, I had a good time. I had to pull myself away from your booth many times, Alex, at the TravelNet conference
Yeah.
because I just wanted to shoot the shit and talk to you and goof around and have a good time. But you have quite the story. So, Alex, I wanted to jump in. One, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. And two,
Always wanted to come on the
oh,
show, Will. So I appreciate it. And you're right. At the track conference, it's just like when two goofy idiots meet each other. It's like a match made in heaven. We were just idiots for like an hour and a half, just being
yeah,
idiots.
I was like, man, I can't believe the amount of people that have walked by us when we're having this conversation and been like, what the hell are these guys talking about? This has nothing to do with vacation rentals. So, yeah,
No,
not one thing. So, Alex, my man, you are one of the co-founders of Whimstay. You work on the partnerships and growth side and working with the operators that put their amazing inventory on your guys' awesome platform. I want to hear though, before we cover the Whimstay journey and starting, ideation, you have an interesting background. You have the background of being an actor. And as your guest form said, let me quote this really quick because it was amazing.
uh-oh,
Alex was a New York
uh-oh.
stage actor for 12 years until the romance of eating beans and doing Shakespeare in a parking lot wore off and decided to try his hand in his
Yes.
hometown Techscape. So bring me back to this moment. What got you into acting in New York and going, after 12 years back to tech?
Yeah, so my family is filled. It's lawyers and politicians, like lawyers and San Francisco politicians, kind of what makes up the landscape of my family. And so I think being an actor seems kind of like a probably a logical next step. If you don't feel like going to law school, and I didn't, and you certainly don't want to be a politician, which I know, then I think acting seemed to make the most sense. And it was something that I really loved doing. So I went to college. I went to a university that I had always wanted to go to, but there was no chance I was ever going to get into it, the University of Michigan, because I just wasn't an awesome student. And it's a really good school and one of those weird places that ever since I was a kid, I wanted to go there. I don't know why. And I learned about junior, senior year in high school that they have a really good theater program, and 80% of the application is your audition. And I was like, well, this sounds pretty good. And a 3.0 ain't getting me into Michigan. So at any rate, I went that route, but I'd always really wanted to become an actor. I did. Studied theater for 4 years at Michigan. Let me tell you, studying theater in college is like a dream. I didn't touch the library for 4 years, so that was nice. And then I got to New York, and being a theater actor is not quite. I don't know if people think that being an actor is a glamorous thing to do. It's not. It's very sort of blue collar in a way. I had a very successful career, one that I can look back on and be really, really, really proud of. Worked at really good theaters, worked with incredible people, great playwrights, and all this. I got to a point, I think, around 2008. Actually, it was a meeting I had with my agent at the time, and I was probably in there bitching about not getting enough work or something. And so I go to him and I'm like, David, like, what's going on? And he goes, hey, look, like, here's something you've got to understand. You have to be okay. I think I was maybe 28, 29. You've got to understand that what this life entails is you have to be okay with being 45 years old, maybe living paycheck to paycheck, and living in a 5-story walk up in Midtown Manhattan. Like, you kind of have to be okay with that if this is something you want to do. And I I worked at successful theaters, and that was kind of my life. And I thought in my mind it was maybe going to get better. Anyways, my response to him was like, "Yeah, dude, I'm in, I'm in." And I think the subway home, I was like, "I am not in." And so I remember the thought that I had was, I will never be able to fly first class on Emirates Air to the Maldives. Like, that was the thought that came to my head, right? I think that that sort of was the beginning of the decline to get into this. And then what happened was, I think around 2009, 2010, while my beloved Giants were in the process of winning their first World Series, I decided I'm going to fly home. And I had actually had a job at a really great theater in San Francisco. So I come home, and my thought was, I'm going to leave New York for a little while. I'm going to do this play here and hang out with my family a little bit. But still, the idea of this can't be it. Like, I need more from my life. Just couldn't, it just didn't leave my head. So my wonderful sister-in-law, Erica, was, I think, the 10th or the 11th employee at
Mm.
Yelp. She's sort of a big shot in the tech industry. And she came to me and said, look, like, I'll get you an interview at Yelp. And I thought, okay, why not? And so I took that interview. I got that job. At one point, I was doing both at the same time. So I was doing sales at Yelp from 6 a.m., 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Then I was walking to the theater and doing a show from 7 to 9. And I did this for about 3 or 4 months. And this was actually fantastic. I loved it. But I started to realize I was really good in sales. And I started to realize that I really liked making the money. And I started to realize what it felt like to be in a startup, because it was pre IPO Yelp. It was still sort of the Wild West. It was very much like, we're building something here. And that energy was an energy I had not felt before. I had felt it a little bit, like maybe starting a new play and sort of building and collaborating, but it felt very collaborative. It felt very like new and fresh and energetic. And I was like, I can get into this. I like this. And so it turns out I was pretty good at sales. A lot of it from lessons from acting, right? Not the BSing part, but acting, really good stage acting requires, I think, a lot of patience and a lot of listening. And because you want to jump your line, you got a laugh line coming and you want to hit that thing, man, because everyone's going to laugh. And there's nothing better than an audience of people laughing at your joke. Not your joke, the playwright's joke, but your delivery of that joke. But you have to be patient. You have to listen. And so every instinct of you that wants to like jump on top of something can't. And that has been the greatest sort of, I would say, lesson for me in terms of sales, is you're going to want to start to talk about things like your product and how your product can help people when people don't really necessarily care that much. They want one thing, like, they want to know how you can help their business. But the only way that you can ever know that is if you know and you're like consuming what they're telling you, so that you can actually take a step back and respond to it in a really cogent and intelligent way and say, hey, like, maybe this mixes up with what we're doing. Maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't, maybe we can work another time. That garners kind of a sense of respect, I think, and trust. So, like, that whole sort of thing happened. Anyways, I worked at the Yelp for a while, went to Arizona and helped open up their office, and then came back to San Francisco, worked at a couple of startups after that. And then I got the call from Ben and Jim Rossiter to do this. And it was, at the time, it's just a no brainer to me. I think the first thing I said to Ben when he suggested what it was, I was like, so it's basically Hotel Tonight for short-term rentals. And I love Hotel Tonight and I love short-term rentals. Where's the mystery? So that's kind of that story.
No, there's so much to unpack and a lot of relatable scenarios, I think, between you and I, probably why these two goofballs can chat for an hour and a half at a booth that makes no
Yeah.
sense with anything that we're talking about. But
Bees. We talk about bees, remember? Yeah.
oh yeah, I remember that was like I still thinking about that conversation. I'm like, man, is that really what their life is like? That's what they live for? That's like a shower thought I have. But like, okay, so there's a couple things I wanna bring up and we'll tie into probably a greater conversation. So I know what you mean when it comes to that line delivery, right? When I was in high school, my senior year, I was Skeeter in the musical Footloose, and so I'm not a
Hell
main
yeah.
character, but a good supporting character. And I had one line that one night I actually forgot to say, so somebody else had to say it. And then the next night I was like, I'm never forgetting my line ever again. And I remember adding more to it and making it like an improv moment, and the crowd reaction was just incredible. I was like, "This is it. This is what I wanna
Yeah.
do." And
It's a
yeah,
drug.
it's a
It's a
yeah,
drug.
and then
Yeah.
my mom and dad were
No.
like, "Yeah, we hear you sing by yourself. You shouldn't go that route." And I was like, "Okay, good point, good point."
No more Skeeter.
Yeah,
No.
no more Skeeter. I'm curious for you because before we get to the Whimstay stuff, I love that you mentioned Hotel Tonight. We had Sam Shank on the show. Great founder, incredible story. But, going into this life of I love that you mentioned not being like the bullshitter where it comes to the sales and the acting and trying to like be all like sleazy salesman, but actually having more attention to listening and the attention to detail and bringing up real solutions, not just trying to push a product down somebody's throat. So, kind of going from tech sales and acting to now your own business with partners and an industry that I would say it's not a new industry. We all know vacation rentals have been around just as long as hotels, as long as people have been traveling, people have been staying in homes. And this current state of the industry is pretty new, even though Airbnb is IPO'd and all this other stuff, right? Like there's still people discovering short-term rentals for the first time today as this episode is being
Okay.
recorded. So how applicable was your previous lives, we'll call them, to what you're doing now? And if you maybe had one piece of advice or a lesson learned along the way that any founder and entrepreneur could apply from your experience, what would that be?
So I would say this, like I would say that I think there's a couple of things you have to know about your company first, right? Like how is and I'd say number one is timing, right? So how is your timing in the market? So just to take Airbnb, for example, why did Airbnb explode? Well, a lot of people will tell you it's because the housing crisis in '08, right? And because it was people needed extra cash and so it just, it's so if you look at sort of, and so then that was great timing for the short-term rental industry in particular. So let's just say that, right? So if you think to yourself, okay, our company's got our timing's good. We've got a place in the market. We've wedged a spot in there and our timing is right. If that is the case, and if that's actually only the case, like if you have couple of corollaries, like if you're really proud of the people that you work with, I'm so proud of the people I work with. They're fabulous and amazing and brilliant. And if your product is really good and that all that stuff, right? Here's the one piece of advice. If those sort of things are happening, you're going to get your ass kicked. That is a fact. There are going to be, in the course of a 4-year period, 37 times when you're going to go to your partner, in my case, my beautiful wife, and I can't do this anymore. And I am, and your only choice is to just get up and go again. This is not, the reason why this is not the reason why this isn't easy. The reason why, there would be more Uber drivers, right? If this was easy is kind of the line, right? In San Francisco, at least, it's the reason why is because it takes a mental fortitude and a conviction and a confidence in your product that I don't know whether I could have done it alone, truth be told. But I had my wife telling me to shut up and keep going. And I had my co-founder, and my co-founders, Ben and Kamish and Jen and Noel, and all these folks continually telling me, just, you've got to keep going. And that's it. That's really it. Because I think at the end of the day, if your product makes sense and if it's good and you've got an awesome product and we do, then it's a war of attrition at some point. Like it's just, you've just got to keep battling through it. So that's the number one piece of advice. If you believe in this product, just keep going because eventually it's gonna get to a point that, that you're going not be proud of because I think one of the things about that's hard about being a founder is that and I think I mentioned this to
Mhm.
you, it's really hard to see your success. It's hard to see the forest through the trees, right?
Yeah.
So it's you're so like into it, and this is a reason why we have a fabulous new CEO, David, who came in, and we can talk about him
Mhm.
later. But like that was why it was so important that he came in, that we got these extra set of eyeballs on what we were doing to be able to say, like, hey, you guys are doing really great work and you've done it great, but these are the things that are missing that we need to
Mhm.
interject, right? We need to do. And so I think that's so I think it's like there's got to be blind faith
Mm.
in a way because you're not going to necessarily always see the progress unless you kind of take that moment to look at the past and see where you are. But it's so I just blind faith and keep going. Like, and I'm always like, I don't know. I don't feel like we're in a position necessarily where our timing isn't right and things like that.
Mhm.
So I think at the same time, you've got to be really honest with yourself too, right? Something could be really passionate and you could love something, but it might not be right. And you can take that passion and put it into a project that maybe is more right. I don't know.
Mhm.
For our case, I feel like what I get from my wife all the time is you built this thing. You guys have built an incredible thing. You cannot stop.
Mhm.
You cannot stop. So it's hard.
100%.
It's hard because sometimes you just want to go. You want to go night night. Want to take a nap.
Yeah. I take a nap right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is so true, and I'm just you're the whole like, everything you're saying right now is so applicable, and I'm reflecting on previous episodes with other founders. Jonathan from Top Key just had him on, and his
He's great.
his
Love that guy.
great guy, great founder, and the number one thing I've heard is a lot of people in this space or in this industry don't get into it on purpose, and if they do, it's kind of a stumble.
That's
And then
so true.
when they do get started and the timing's right, the product is good, and then the team is there to support and be, like you said, brilliant, amazing, just incredible, the backbone of the business, that you're kind of in this moment where you get so much done in a year, 6 months, a month, and then you look up after a grind and you think like, "Oh man, we haven't accomplished this. We're not there yet." And then you look up for a second and go, "Holy shit, we actually accomplished in 3 months what most people get done in 2 years, 3 years." And so the speed that you move at is so fast. I think we get so acclimated to it that it feels slow. But in all reality, our friends, our family are like, "Holy shit, like what?" Like I get that comment all the time from my friends here in Denver. They're like, "Hey, we haven't caught up in a while." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's been like a month, right?" And they're like, "No, it's been like 3 months and we haven't had a beer and we haven't hung out." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, nice, good to know." And they're like, "What's going on?" And then I tell them, they're like, "What? You did that in 3 months?" And it's
That's
like, "Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah." So like to us, it's so normal that when we come up for air, it's kind of refreshing because I think there's those moments, like you said, where you just want to pull your head out, right? Or your hair out and just go, like, "Oh, I just want to take a nap. I want to go to sleep. I want to have time. I want to go on vacation. I want to have that first class flight to the Maldives." And you look up and then you're like, "Oh, okay, we did get a ton done." So like I need I don't know. I have the number one I want to know for you too. I have these moments, right, where I like last week, I'll say from last week, I recovered from being sick after travel net and then just felt dialed in with the team. Ginny and I were just killing it. The team was executing and going above and beyond and taking initiative in certain aspects and areas. And I just felt so good. And I was like, this is going to fuel me for the next sprint of conferences and getting all the way through the new year, basically, because there's a plan, there's execution. So, not to hog the mic, but basically, with you, when do you get those dialed in moments that really carry you through? Because, like you said, like, there's 47 times throughout the duration of your journey that you're like, I just want to, I want to give up, or maybe like there was a time for my journey that I was like, maybe this business isn't a full-time business. Maybe this is a part-time thing and I need to figure out what to do with the other half of my time, which again, it was just being early and being the only one in the market and all this other stuff, right? But like, anyways, I'm rambling. I would love to know like what
You're not rambling, and I think well, look, dude, I mean, I think I think you speak from a place I mean, you've had a lot of growth. You've had a lot of growth. And I think that there is, there are podcasts that people in this industry want to be in, and you started this thing from nothing. I don't want this to be a makeout fest, but it is like, I do think it's important, right, to mark your
yeah,
successes. It's really
100%.
important. And it's hard to do. So what are some of those things that fuel me? For
Mhm.
me, it's when we have certain like intake meetings or all hands meetings where you kind of see the rest of the company doing their
Mm,
thing also. You get so sort of siloed, I think, within your department sometimes. And I think early on in a startup, you kind of have your hands everywhere. And I think as you start to grow up a little bit, departments have their jobs, and so for me, I think when I start to see all of the things that CTO commission is doing and engineering and product are doing, right, and how like the road, like how much progress we've made in that, right, it's like I learned recently that I always kind of thought, well, bookings are just kind of like random a little bit. Like you just kind of got to hope someone finds you and then, book stuff. And what I've learned, and this was a big, massive part of what David did when he came in, was that there are certain things that you can do in the user experience and the product and all these things that increase bookings, right? And increase sort of your visibility in the traveler experience. And we've almost kind of created this like secret sauce a little bit where it's like, we've kind of, I don't want to say figured something
mhm,
out, but it's like we've got an idea of how to make a hyper growth happen on conversion
mm,
side. And so when I'm hearing all of that stuff happening, and really my focus and my team's focus is onboarding as many PMCs as we can and connecting with as many PMSs and channel managers as we can so that we can connect those. And then that's kind of what your focus is. And it's never fast enough. It's never fast enough.
yeah,
And then you see that, what product and technology and engineering and marketing and account management, our account management team is incredible, Jen. And so when you kind of start to see those sort of things happening a little bit more, it's like, holy shit, like this is not, we're not fucking around. Like we're here to take over the world. And so, and I think that really that like so I could use an all hands, maybe not every
yeah,
week, but like once a month at the very least, where it's like, hey dudes, like this is what we're doing and this is what's coming down the pike. And here's what we've got in our sprints. They send out, Jatal sends out these sprint emails. I never look at them. I never look at them. I'm just like, yeah, there's a lot of shit there that I don't know. So that's basically that. But I do look at it and I do say that's a lot of stuff that we are doing. And there's enough people replying back being like, yeah, this is awesome. That I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. So yeah, I think that's, I think it's, a little bit from the outside helps,
yeah, yeah. Well, there's okay, so I love how you've encompassed all of this and
Here's my niner mug, by the way. I'm just gonna want
yeah,
that. Okay, go
I'm gonna
ahead.
blur that one out. We don't support that team over
Oh,
here. Just kidding. Okay, so we've covered in the last 20 something minutes a lot of your journey and founderism, basically is what I call it.
that's
What
right.
is Whimstay? Because
Is it a
I've
disease, founder? It's like a disease.
100%
Founderology?
founderology.
I
So to maybe share some context on Whimstay. So Ginny, who is my COO at Hospitality FM,
who I love.
she's amazing and
I love.
just awesome human. So she came out, we were in prep of the kind of public launch here, and she booked a place downtown Denver. And she goes, hey, I actually booked on Wednesday, and it was a great experience. I got direct info for the property, everything was smooth. It was actually a really good user experience. And obviously, I knew of you. You and I have met at VRMA and other conferences and kind of chit chatted and shot the shit a little bit. But never actually using the product myself, never knowing specifically out the gate, like, okay, like who's on the platform, what is it like, da 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 da, going through all that stuff. It got me really intrigued, especially because she is a product and a brand nerd. So she like normally would be like, "Hey, I'm gonna pick apart things," and she had a really good experience, all in all. And so
And oh, happy to hear
and
that.
she stayed with a great property manager. So having those two combos, I think, was really important. So what is Whimstay from the ideation part where you and your co-founders got together and like, hey, this is the idea that we want to create the hotel tonight of short-term rentals to where you are today and where you guys see yourselves going? Because I know there was some capital raised. Now you have a new CEO. Like there's a whole life that's already happened within this business as well. So kind of for the listener's sake, let's go into that, and then I'm gonna poke and prod and some other areas of conversation.
Yeah, I think that from the very beginning, it was from us, from our perspective. So just so you kind of know how it started, my business partner, co-founder Ben, has had seen a ton of success in his own tech sort of life. He went to Stanford at 14, like kind of one of those types, and started a company that sold to Bank of America when he was 21, and just through a number of different sort of exits through tech. And so he's a little bit later on in life, he decided he wanted to just get a couple of homes, a home in Tahoe, a home in Maui, right? And he wanted to rent those out. And he's got that sort of business mind that's I think very hungry business mind and I think always kind of working. And he realized, well, I've got these two homes. And when it comes down to the last minute, I can't do anything. I can add a discount, but I'm still just hoping that somebody sees discount. Like that's it. And hope is not a strategy, right? So he thought, well, that just seems silly and that's absurd in this market, considering how big this industry is. We should probably build something. So that was kind of the iteration. That was the ideation. And so it came from a need, right? Came from a personal need from Ben. And then we started to build it out. And then we realized as sort of more of us came on, right, that there's two aspects to this. There's the property manager and then there's the traveler. And so if we can create a win-win, any win-win in any market is a good thing, right? So my focus is always on the property manager, always, always. It's just how I function in it, and I am just so embedded within this sort of idea. I want to be able to help them in so many different ways, and to allow them the opportunity to fill off nights that otherwise are going to go unsold to get them incremental revenue. To me, is very very attractive. If you were to go and talk to Noelle, who is our CMO, and she deals a lot on the traveler side, then she'll tell you as a traveler herself, right? This is a massive win because she's always traveling spontaneously, right? And so for her to be able to get any type of vacation rental at a really great price last minute to her is gold. So we had this win-win, right? So then I think at that point it really is about now what do we as a company need to do in order to amplify both sides of those wins? What you just said about Jenny, it to me, I love her. If we're goofy, I don't know what the hell she is. So it's like, but for her to be able to have a traveler
Yeah.
experience, right? Flawless, okay, is to us so really important. And I have to emphasize some of the really awesome things that David has done as he's come in. And that's, I think, really sort of emphasizing the user experience and making it a sticky experience for them. On the property manager side, on our side, right? We have this mentality on the sales side, on the acquisition side, the supply acquisition side. The direct bookings are a really, really important part of this industry growing. And the reason why, and this is coming from somebody who's founded a channel, right? But the reason why is because there's that gap. I think Forbes recently had it that the gap is now like 4% between hotels and short-term rentals, right? So that gap is closing dramatically. How are we going to not only close that gap, but start to overtake? Well, one of the things that we need to make sure we're doing as an industry is that we are matching what people are expecting on hotels, right? We have got to have that sort of sense of what makes us not only we've got to match what hotels are doing, right? But we've got to up it. And so we have, as an industry, have this really beautiful, I think, thing in place, and that is we can be very, very local, right? So if I am in Oregon, Bedford, Oregon, I don't is that even a thing? I just made that up. I don't even know if
I
that
I I used to live in
I mean,
Oregon. I have no idea though.
but let's just say that there's that place called I think there's like a
Yeah,
Medford,
there's a
right?
Medford, I think.
Or let's say there's a place called Bedford Morgan. Let's say there's a brewery here, and that brewery makes really good
Mm,
IPAs. That feels like it fits the bill,
100%.
right? So if I'm the property manager, I want to provide those a 6 pack of those IPAs in the fridge when people get there, right? Or the coffee or whatever it is, right? So if we are so if and there's a point a method to this blabbering madness that if property managers are focusing on getting direct bookings, focusing on that, right? That raises everybody's game. And if everybody's game is raised, then travelers are going to say that I just had an incredible experience based on the fact that the property manager worked really, really hard to bring me back as a direct booking the next time. So I had a really incredible experience. I ain't going back to hotels anymore, right? We do that enough times, that 4% goes this way, right? So for us, a really big part of that has always been let's give property managers all the travelers' information, fully, totally, completely unencrypted. Let's give that to them. Let's allow them to market to that traveler a little bit. Let's allow them, and we'll say, you know what? We're traveler acquisition. Our 5% commission is a traveler acquisition fee, no more, no less, right? We're not afraid that we're going to lose clients. There are always people that are just going to go to OTAs and channels. That's always going to be the case. There is enough for everybody. There is enough for everybody. I think this scarcity mentality, I think kind of tends to pervade things. We don't have to feel that way. We can be abundant. There is abundance. There is enough for everybody. And so we feel like if we can do those two types of things, have an incredible traveler experience and then have an incredible property manager experience. How can't we win? Like, how can't we win? And then how can't everybody win? And I know that it sounds kumbaya, but why can't that be the case in a business? Why, right? I find that if everybody is fired up about something, I think and the long term effect of it is that I don't know, it provides a lot for a lot of different people and could be a really good thing. And so that's kind of what our mentality is.
All right. So you're trying to grow your portfolio and your property management business, but sometimes owners don't have the best peace of mind when it comes to giving up the keys to their home to an unknown brand or company. And of course, let's be honest, sometimes we hear the horror stories of guests and the bad guests that stay in vacation rentals and throw parties. Well, safely as you covered, because not only do they screen your guests that are staying, but they also ensure that you are covered from all things such as ill intent, stupidity, aka vacation brain, and other things like pet damage and theft. While doing that, you are able to partner with Vintory and grow your portfolio with their marketing platform that helps ensure that you are attracting the right owners to your rental program and growing your business in the destination that you are in. Or if you're in multiple destinations, that works too. So get the links in the show notes because both companies have special offers. And if you don't use a link, but you end up talking to them, guess what? Just tell them that Will Slicker sent you from Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, and they'll get you covered. And you can also let them know that maybe you've heard of them on our platform, hospitality.fm. So, of course, like always, make sure you grab the links in the show notes. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, back to the episode. Yeah, and I think you know, I had this conversation with somebody, and I think you'll agree with this in the sense of I, y- especially when companies like let's say they put their company ethos on the wall and their mission statement, all this stuff, right? But then like you see the opposite behavior within the team or the CEO or the founder or whatever. And I had this conversation because our core values and ethos and all the things that we say as a company internally to our clients, to partners, X, Y, and Z isn't just because it's our company values, it's our personal values. Like we live this personally. One of the values I would love bringing up, it's one of the hardest ones I think I struggle with the most, but it's the most like resonant value that we have is to have the hard conversations no matter how much the financial or the impact of that conversation can financially benefit or harm us, right? And that's the same conversation or same ethos I have in my personal life with friends, with family, with a relationship, like having the hard conversations no matter how scary the outcome or positive the outcome could be. And so I agree with you, like the win-wins don't have to be a win for just business. It can have a personal impact and it could be something that's not a separation. And so I love that you guys are mentioning that. And as a channel, I think you mentioned hotels, right? So like the experience that guests have on hotels versus booking direct with a vacation rental manager or booking on maybe a crappy OTA that just is barely spun up. It's not really a built out thing. It's kind of a copy and paste model. That user experience, there's a reason why you mentioned Hotel Tonight was acquired. There's a reason why Airbnb is how big it is, and there's a reason why Ginny had the great experience that she did on Whimstay, is because I think when the product's super easy to use and it doesn't take this crazy, ugly UX UI type of feel, that can really make the difference. And I want to introduce you to this guy if you haven't already met him already. His name is Zach Boozy Cruz. He's the host of Behind the Stage podcast. He basically was on the show and we talked about this experience, right? Like, why is our booking experience so shitty in the industry to where there's tons of capital that has flowed into the industry. There's all these things that have happened, and yet we still have a horrible booking experience for our vacation homes. This makes no sense. Why? It makes like that
Yeah.
should be
Yeah.
something that should be at the forefront. And it sounds like from Ginny's experience and what you guys are building, that that's a core focus.
Well, I'm actually here to tell you this, and I've listened to Zach's podcast before, so would love to meet him. But I will tell you from experience that it increases bookings. Just and I was shocked to know that, to be honest, right? But I think that people think, oh well, a traveler's gotten to the site, and they're and we've got them. No, you don't, right? There's a lot to be said about stickiness, right? How important is stickiness? And I think everybody knows. I do think that we put such an emphasis, I think, on that and a lot of other things within sort of product and how to kind of sharpen that up a little bit and I think amplify and highlight, I think what's good about what we're doing. I think all those things combined. Again, I sort of used the word secret sauce before, and but that's really kind of what we've got. And our product and engineering team are kind of in this mode right now, and so and I'm in this mode. I got to get more on there.
Yeah.
Got to get more on the platform, and so got to meet the. I have to meet the demand. I have to meet the
Mhm.
demand. Oh God, so you know but there's a lot to be said about it, right? There's a lot to be said about it. It increases your bookings.
Mhm.
That's it. It does. It increases the opportunity for that person to come back again. It's massive, massive. And I wouldn't have known that. I
100%.
just wouldn't have,
Well, I'm
you know?
curious. I got to ask this question to Sam Shank, who, for the listeners, is the co-founder, CEO, or was the CEO of Hotel Tonight, which was acquired by Airbnb, I think for like 400 million or something like that. Like it was a crazy,
Yeah.
crazy amount. And I asked him because they built Hotel Tonight within 10 weeks, and obviously tons of iterations and version 100 versus V1, right, is probably completely different. But as you guys are building the product, there's two, like you've mentioned, there's two sides of the marketplace. And I wonder how, to me, it's already hard enough to get book direct or get direct bookings within our property management company. I know plenty of other companies that have been around a lot longer. It builds up over time. So it's like, I think time's on your side. The more you invest in it, the more you push it,
Definitely.
obviously it's going to happen. But you guys are targeting a specific user group, which is the kind of the last minute stay. Like, oh, I need to travel tonight for work or tomorrow or whatever, the kind of like last minute booking window. How do you guys balance the supply of inventory? Obviously, like that's really important to have stuff for people to book on, but then getting the user, the traveler, to really kind of one, discover you, but then also get comfortable with the side of like, okay, like I'm booking on an OTA that isn't Airbnb. Not that they know the word OTA or term, most likely they don't, but a channel like Airbnb, but not Airbnb. So like I guess what's the internal conversation around this two-sided marketplace?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to give a lot of credit to our marketing team and the B2C side and what we've been able to do on that front. And a lot of, I don't know what the impact is of branding. I'm a sucker for branding.
Yeah, you and me both.
My wife sort of me all the time that I'll go to a grocery store and if it looks like artisanal peanut butter, I'm buying it, right? If it looks like it came from some guy's backyard, I'm like, oh, that's got to be good peanut butter. But it's probably Jiffy just under a glass bottle. I don't know, right? So I'm a sucker for branding. That makes me believe a lot of other people are a sucker for branding. We have this beautiful tagline, "Seize the
Mm.
stay," which I adore, and I think that enough people start to see what that means and what that is, and I think it makes sense for them. We've had some really important partnerships. I don't want to get too much
Yeah.
into. I can't get too much in really, but one of them, Google, was a really great partnership for us. They approached us. They saw what we were doing. They saw the impact of what we were doing. So that, those kinds of partnerships are always really, really important,
Mm.
I think, to kind of getting the brand out a little bit. But most of what we've done, most of our growth, I think that last I saw, and again, I hate to give like percentages,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes they're wrong, but around the 300% increase in bookings year to
Mm.
date, right? And that's attributable, in my opinion, to a lot of the great marketing that we've done, what I think is really good branding. And then in addition to that, what that kind of secret sauce that I was talking about a
Yeah.
little bit. So that those types of things, right? And then I think as we grow, we can start to amplify it a lot more and really start to get in front of people and say, look, like we're we're legitimate, we're valid. What we are doing is makes sense in the market and makes sense for now. Look, like at the very beginning of this thing, you talked about sort of where the industry is in terms of booking pace versus booking
Yeah.
window, right?
100%.
We'll get
Let's
into it
do it.
now because I think that's
Yeah.
okay. So, I mean, I think that every property manager is feeling it a little bit because booking pace has slowed down considerably. And I think it's slowed down considerably from the perspective of 2020 and 2021, where it was just these astronomically high numbers, right? And there are a lot of owners that got into it around that
Yeah.
time, obviously, right? Because they were like, well, look at all this money coming in. I'm going to go buy my second house before I buy my first house, and then I'm going to rent that out, and I'm going to make millions and millions of dollars.
Mhm.
Yay! Then you give that to a property manager, and then 2020 and 2021, and then even parts of 2022. Well, it doesn't look the same way in 2023 because there's been a regression to the
Yeah.
mean, but the mean has been raised. The mean has been raised. Let's be very clear. Like there are more bookings now than there were 2018, right? 2019, but they're less than there were in 2020 and 2021. So those booking paces are down. The booking windows, however, are squeezed. So when maybe a lot of property managers are saying, well, it's May and July is normally booked out right now, and it's not, and that's scary. And I get it, right? But a lot of those July months we are finding are now starting to get booked out in July,
Mhm.
June, maybe, right? And so this is kind of a trend. Again, this goes back to the timing thing, right? Where we feel really, really good about where we are on timing. Now, how long is that going to play itself out? We don't know. We have no clue. This could go back to a stronger booking pace. My guess is these numbers are all going to go up. I think that there are some people out there that are always going to book spontaneously. I think that if you look at this post-COVID world where, a lot of us thought that the digital nomad thing would die
Yeah.
out, right? It hasn't. It hasn't. And so, yeah, there are a lot of offices that are requiring people to come back, but there are also a bunch that aren't. And so that's a big part of our customer base of those digital nomads who are sitting in, they're in Nashville and they're like, I think I want to go to Myrtle
Yeah.
Beach on Friday and stay there for 30 days. So, so anyways, it's just that's it. It's just our landscape is changing. How do we adapt? Adapting's hard because the old way is easy and can be a challenge. But we are changing as an industry and in a massive way. Hospitality in general is changing. I think we can all agree on that. And so how do we kind of adapt to that is really, really important. And that's something that we're focusing on all the time over here,
Mhm.
right? So, and I think that Will, you've got a podcast in an industry at a time to me, you could not have a better time to be doing what you're
Mhm.
doing. Yeah, I just don't think you can. I think that we're on to something here. I think that we're on you talked about this at the beginning where it's an ancient industry in some
Yeah.
ways, but it's also Airbnb, right? And what's happened since then. We're still on the on-ramp to this sucker, man. Like this, we are very, very we are in the first or second inning of this thing. So there's a lot for us to know and to learn and to adapt to. Travelers are finding us. Last thing I'm going to say, and I am rambling because I've had
I love it. I love it.
coffee. Yeah. Last thing I'll say about this is I was talking to my niece and she was off to Europe. She was doing that sort of post college Europe trip. And I thought, well, okay, because I'm Ancient 47, and I was like, "Oh, so do you have your hostels?" I'm in the short-term rental industry, let's be very clear. I'm like, "Did you figure out what hostels in Paris you're staying?" She's like, "Hostels? Are you insane?" I was like, "Oh, you're staying in hotels? Hotels? Are you insane? No, I'm staying in short-term rentals." And so, I probably should have led with that considering what I do, but, like, so that whole generation, right? Millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, they don't wanna go to hotels. They want to experience the local life. They're a very different breed of travelers, and that's what's coming down the pike. So how do we adapt to them? Their behaviors, right? Their sort of wants, their needs, their booking windows, right? Yeah, there's a lot of really, really, really cool stuff, happening in this industry. And I think if people are feeling can be adaptable, everybody's going to feel really, really successful in the next couple of years, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there's so oh man, you gave me so many golden nuggets. I love it. But this this whole thing with pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, travel trends and data and booking windows and all this other stuff, you know, I'm probably one of the outliers. During COVID, I did travel. Like early 2020 days, one, I was active on the National Guard, so I had to move and do all this other stuff and do test sites and blah blah blah. But after I got out, I was on planes. I'm like, I'm going to Mexico, I'm gonna go to Florida, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna like I want to like one, it was cheap. They were all last minute decisions. I think seeing somebody in San Diego. So I was like, I want to fly to San Diego this weekend because I have no other
I think I was saying
yeah.
somebody, but I don't
Well, I
remember.
kinda remember, but it was a, like, situation where yeah, anyways, long story short, like,
Okay.
I was traveling, but I know a lot of the world did hunker down. A majority of the population did say, "I'm not traveling, I'm not going, I'm working remote, I'm, again, being flexible, doing maybe a staycation, a drive to location type situation." Obviously, that was huge. Now, this type of crazy summer that we've had, a lot of people are like, "What the heck? Where's my bookings? Why is my summer not full? Why am I this? Why am I that?" That's because they're going out to Europe. They're doing the thing that
They're
they
definitely
never
wrong.
got to do.
They
Yeah,
definitely wrong.
but it's gonna normalize. I think the
Definitely.
bottom will fall out. The investors and Lauren Madewell with Bellum's Cabin Rentals said this on her episode was, you know,
One of my favorite human beings in the world.
amazing. She's like, I can't wait
Amazing.
to hang
Hilarious.
out with her in person. She, was just talking about these investors, right? That get into short-term rentals and then they expect all these numbers, but yet they don't understand hospitality. They don't understand,
Right.
investment in the property continues post-purchase. And there's a whole thing that we
Right.
can go into. But you're 100% right. I think the one thing that's never going to change is humans, we're always going to have that on a whim. I want to go travel. I want to do this thing. I want to go to Europe and I'm going to stay in a short-term rental. And not to mention, like, I know we've talked about Airbnb and other, platforms and channels throughout this episode, but I'm listening to pretty much every episode Brian Chesky has been doing on his kind of podcast sprint right now. He was on Armchair Expert to now Diary of a CEO and a bunch of these other bigger podcasts. And one of the things for me, as I keep hearing him, kind of talk about is people want to feel at home. And one of his things growing up, he never felt at home. He was small. He was kind of the weird kid that never really fit in. So why was he so infatuated with design? Because he wanted to create a world where he felt at home. Hence why it makes sense on the creation of Airbnb and the experience and how it is living like a local type situation where your niece is probably like, "Hey, I don't want to stay in a hotel where it's small and I have this staff that's like running around and doing all this stuff. Like, I want to feel at home while I'm traveling and experiencing something new." So, like, this whole thing it's not going to go away. I have a lot of people that kind of don't really know what I do. They understand it's podcasting and travel and short-term rentals, but they think I'm like telling people how to get the best hotel deals or something like that, which is complete opposite. But they'll be like, "Oh, well, isn't
No.
isn't Airbnb kind of like dead and blah blah blah?" And it's like, well, Airbnb to you is a platform. Airbnb to me is an industry that's really called vacation rentals, short-term rentals, whatever we want to call it, and it's a broader world. You're seeing the
Yeah.
surface of the iceberg, and I'm seeing the whole iceberg under the water, and yeah, all this other stuff. So as I'm rambling for this, I guess like final thought is that it's not going to go away. The companies like you who are early, building good product, building good team. I have this one mentor who said this quote to me, and it's always resonated as I've kind of been like through that moment of like pulling my hair out to then like, yes, I'm really happy, like we're doing great things. And it's the right people doing the right thing at the right time, building a great product. And I think like that combination of what you guys are doing, it sounds like that's the secret sauce. Like, right? Like if we're going to define the secret sauce at the end of this episode, it's the right people building the right product, doing the right thing at the right time. So I
Boom,
think, yeah.
boom. Oh, I got chills. I got chills. I got
Woo!
chills.
Woo! The mic just caught on fire. I'm just kidding.
No, look, I mean, I get chills when truth happens, and so that was an obnoxious thing I just said, but it's true. Like it's when something resonates, and I think that's absolutely right. Right, that's absolutely right. I think that everybody can hang their hat. Everybody in this industry can hang their hat on timing. I do. I honestly believe that. So whether I can't. Everyone can't hang their hat on a great product or great whatever or great people, but everybody can start as their baseline. Okay, if I'm in the short term rental industry, timing is good. And that's a great place to start because the other stuff you can kind of figure out and fix. Timing, you can't, right? Timing is just a natural, organic process of the universe and society and blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah. So, we've got that baseline, right? We've got that baseline. And so I think it's something for people maybe to build off of it if they wanted to.
agreed. Well, you mentioned so, we're still in the second inning of this game of, short-term rentals and hospitality. Where do you guys see Whimsay going by the ninth inning? And do we, where is the future looking? I know it can be super hard to think that far ahead. I know for me, my business is constantly changing and we're constantly expanding on different thoughts and ideas that weren't the same thoughts I had or ideas 2 years ago when we started the network and when I started the podcast
That's
5 years ago. So like it's
totally.
constantly changing, but I won't hold you to it. But today, where Alex is sitting, looking at Wimstay, looking at the industry, where do you go?
There's always like a fine line, right? Because you need to have these goals to shoot to, but at the same time, you've got to really be not only focused on, but really embracing and loving what's happening. Here's what I suspect. Number one, international. That's number one for us. We know that our product will thrive in Europe. We don't think it, we know it. We see the data, we see the numbers, we talk to people over there. And so for us, we need to make sure that we've really figured this thing out. And we're right now we're live in Canada, United States, and Mexico, Latin America. And so for us to be able to build a product that feels so robust, we could just clone that sucker and take it over into Europe, into Asia, to Australia, right? So that's a massive part of our roadmap over the course of the next year. I don't want to put timing on that because I don't know if it's the next year. We just know it's something that we know is really, really important for us to be an incremental tool, right? We don't necessarily need to be Airbnb and Verbo. We don't. What we really need to be and want to be is something that is a necessary arrow in the quiver, right? So you've got Airbnb and Verbo doing those 30 and 60 and 90 and 120 and all those things, and they're going out here. Then just allow us to be this thing that takes care of these orphan nights and these 29 days and filling in here and filling in there and increasing incremental revenue and incremental travelers to us, then we become a necessary part of what you're doing, right? If we can become, from the property manager's perspective, a necessary component to driving revenue and new travelers, which we that's exactly what our plan is. That's what we're doing now. No reason we're not going to be that. We are going to be that. We are going to be that. So I think that we are going to be that. And so that's kind of where we function, I think. I'm trying to think of like a sports analogy, like a quarterback has an outlet a little bit. Like, I don't want to say that we're, not, but an outlet can get you a 20 or 30-yard gain. And so to us, to be something that is, that I think supplements what they are doing in a really, I think, impactful way. So that's on that side, on the supply side, and then on the traveler side, an app in everybody's phone. I mean, yeah, just And what does travel look like in the next 10 years? We can't even fathom. We can't fathom what it looked like in the next 10 years. There is the internet and social media and all of these things. They've got its faults and there's a lot. Everything is weird and bananas, but like But one thing it has done is it has made us all together and globalized in one. I can talk to somebody in Australia or communicate with them
Yep.
like this. And so, and you can travel and do all those things and see the world in a way that you just couldn't before. And so what's it going to look like in 10 years? So for us to be a really an integral part of what we think is going to be an incredible traveler movement in the next 10 years. And I think what our industry is going to be in the next 10 years. I mean, I honestly believe buckle your seatbelts. I really, really, really do, because I just, I think that we're dealing with something that is, as sort of this thing goes this way, we're meeting. It's like our industry meets
Mm,
where the world is going, in my opinion.
I love it. And earlier, you kind of mentioned this is just founder to founder. I think a lot of our listeners on this podcast are founders, they're entrepreneurs, they've built something and they are building something. They've been successful. They've had the eat shit moments, they've had the failures, they've had a lot of this. Founder to founder, how do you for you personally, how do you make sure that you're enjoying the process or the current moment, especially when you go through these times of head down, focus, build, and then you come up for air and you're like, oh wow, we got so much done in like the last year or 6 months or however long it is. How do you enjoy the moment? Where's what grounds you in kind of some of this building phases and of course all the stuff we talked
It,
about.
it takes work, and yes, and because the mind will default to what's wrong, and the reason the mind defaults to what's wrong is because it's fight or flight, right? It's looking for how can I protect myself, and so I think the first thing that the mind will always do is say, "This is not enough. I need more than what I currently have." And the fact of the matter is that you don't. And so I do think a spiritual practice, whatever that means for you, if it means prayer, if it means going to church, if it means whatever, for me, it's meditation and reading about non-duality and those things. That to me is really, really important, because what it does is it allows you to sit in just being for a moment. And it's really important to do that and to watch thoughts as they kind of come by. And if you are able to, I think, passively be a witness to your thoughts and your feelings, if you can do that as a practice for 10 or 15 minutes every single day of your life, then those things that are normally like, this is not the way that it's supposed to look, those things become a little bit more fleeting. You can watch them. And if you watch something, you watch a thought, I don't like the way that this is happening right now, even though if something is happening, that's what's happening. So if this thing is like, I don't like the way that this is happening right now, then if you can be a witness to that, that thing doesn't have any power and it tends to dissolve a little bit. And so I think whatever spirituality or faith or whatever those things are, whatever they mean to you, I think that's really, really, really important to be grounded, to sort of be a witness to your thoughts and your feelings a little bit more. Read some of those books, I Am That by Nisargadatta is one of my favorites. And Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle is a really popular one. And I know Andrew McConnell talks a lot about the Stoics. I think they're really great. And so it's like those types of things I think are really, really important to understanding one thing, and that is this: what is happening is exactly what is supposed to be happening. That's it. So there's that part of you that's going to resist what's happening. I don't like the way this is happening. I don't like what's happening in the world, and I don't like what's happening at work. The full acceptance of what is happening actually drives you to I think to a lot more. So that's kind of my little pop spirituality, psychology.
I love it. I love it.
That's all.
Yeah, I never really talk about that stuff much on the show just because again, like there's so many people that listen from different backgrounds and like you said, faiths and spiritualities and beliefs. And one thing I think has always been really good for me is like I use prayer as my way to talk to God, and I use meditation as my way to
Beautiful.
hear God, right? Like I think there's
Beautiful. I
two-way,
love it. I
yeah,
love it. I
two-way
love it.
communication, whether it's
I love
observing
it.
your thoughts. Yeah, there's all that stuff. So I love what you just said.
I
Yeah,
love it.
it's
Yeah.
it's great. So Alex,
Look, I mean, here's the other thing. Here's the
yeah.
other thing. And this is, I'm going to woo on you. So I'm going to get a little wooey. But how you perceive the world is how the world's going to show up. Just point blank. If you perceive the world as I'm a victim to this world and all this, then you're just going to create scenarios where you're more of a victim. And that's just the reality of it. If it's so Oprah to be like attitude of gratitude will make you but making a gratitude list is something I did for a really long time, and it changed sort of how I viewed the world. If you can change how you view the world, so if you're looking at the world as this is a gift, me breaking my arm right now is a gift, right? So what I can look at 1,000 instances in the Wednesday sort of iteration where I was like, how is this happening right now? This is horrible, right? And it turns out 5 years later, if that didn't happen, 2 years later, if that didn't happen, we aren't where we are, right? So if you can just constantly say it, is that what is happening? If you can be grateful for it, if you can look at it from that perspective, then that's the reality that you're going to create for yourself. One where you're going to continually be grateful. So, and however that does it, meditation, prayer, church,
Mhm.
whatever it is, and your thing, hearing and then listening. I love that,
Yeah.
Will. I love it.
Well,
I think that shit's really
well,
important. So
100%. Yeah, not to continue to drag on the conversation, but there's I don't know if you ever watched the Tony Robbins documentary back in the day on Netflix, the I'm Not Your Guru.
I
He
did.
basically has this moment with this girl, right, where talks about her dad and her relationship with him and how horrible it is. And he goes, "It's not horrible. It's what made you who you are today. Like you need to be thankful for the shit. The shit has made you today, and the greatness is great, and the shit is also great. Like you just need to accept that. Like without the like I always use my story like without going through what I went through in high school where I was homeless and I was on drugs and I was pretty much burning every bridge I ever had that like I could look at that and be like, oh, that was a horrible time of my life. I never want to think about it again. I want to be here. I want to be where I'm at. And without that stuff, it's just
More
super.
chills,
Oh,
more chills,
oh,
more chills.
I know we could probably do another episode on this. So I definitely, Alex, thank you so much, man, for being on the podcast. This is way better than I could have ever imagined it, knowing our B conversation at Tracks and Travel Nets Conference. So I just want to say thank you for being on the
No
show.
one will ever know what our big conversation is. No one will ever
If you
know.
find us at Verma or VRMA, come up and ask, and we'll maybe let you know, depending how many drinks or beers we've had. But no, seriously, thank you so much for being on the show, and for all the
I love
listeners.
you, brother. I really appreciate it, and this was
Of
fun.
course, yes, and right back at you, man. And listeners, if you want to get to know Alex more, get to hear more about Whimstay, check out the show notes. Make sure you're liking and subscribing, doing all the stuff because I have a really good feeling that this is a company and a group of people that you're going to want to watch and continue to hear the story as it unfolds in front of us. So, thank you, Alex, once again, and for all the listeners, we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.